His book, or comic book, I guess, is what you can absolutely call it, because it is that. Mycroft Holmes and the Apocalypse Handbook is available now. And for those in the Los Angeles area, you can be at his event at Barnes & Noble at the Grove this coming Thursday at 7 Eastern Time. He is the all-time leading scorer in the history of the NBA. He is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Great to see you, sir. Thanks for being here.
Nice to be here, Rich. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So I'll start with the question I asked you off air. Interesting times, huh?
Very much so, and never thought I'd see it quite like this, but here we are, and it means that we have work to do, and we have to straighten a few things out.
What did you think of the president's comments on Friday night in relation to the NFL players who are kneeling and saying that he would love to see an NFL owner tell a player that's kneeling, get that son of a bitch out of here, you're fired? What'd you think of that?
I thought that was an absurd statement, and certainly it's ridiculous. The players have the right to express their feelings about what they see happening in our country, and some of these things are very alarming, and people have to talk about it and discuss it, and hopefully, these are things that we can fix. But unless there's some discussion, they won't get fixed.
So I do want to handle what others are saying in, I guess, a more nuanced fashion than the president, that they are then saying to the president, thank you for saying this. And that is the idea that somebody is using the flag as a form of protest by kneeling in front of it during the national anthem. What would you say to folks who have that stance, figurative stance?
Well, I understand what they mean. If they perceive some slight to the nation and to the flag, I would appreciate what they're doing. I don't think that the people who are doing this during the national anthem are trying to insult our country. They're trying to provoke people's conscience to understand that things aren't right, and there's a very serious situation that needs to be dealt with. That is the way that the legal justice system and the police treat Black Americans. There's an issue there that has been a problem, and we need to deal with it.
Well, Jim Brown has said that he doesn't like the kneeling in the national anthem and would advise NFL players not to do it. Kaepernick in particular. What do you think about that, Kareem?
Well, that's his opinion, and he's certainly entitled to it. I don't think really that's the issue. The issue is how Black Americans are being treated by the legal justice system. Everything else is superfluous to that. Everything else is just people trying to deflect discussion of the issue because they don't want to see the issue discussed. And we have to discuss these issues in order to deal with them.
Well, have you been in contact with Colin Kaepernick, Kareem?
No, I haven't.
He hasn't reached out. Did you ever think of reaching out to him?
Yeah, I did, but it wasn't possible. He was probably under a lot of pressure at the time.
When was this? When this was all first happening last year?
Yeah, when it was first happening last year, and I also talked to Dr. Edwards. But this is Kaepernick's way of bringing attention to an issue, and people don't want to acknowledge that.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar here in the Rich Eisen Show studio. Does what is happening now remind you of the late 60s at all?
Absolutely. I remember in my own case, right after Dr. King was assassinated, I was involved in a demonstration on UCLA's campus. And people came up to me while I was standing there and said, hey, you're going into the NBA. What are you complaining about? You're going to have the opportunity to make a lot of money. And the two issues do not relate. What I was protesting about the assassination of Dr. King was quite valid, whether or not I was going to have an NBA career. And people have to get their heads around that, because whatever they might say, those were the facts.
But we're not talking about an assassination of an individual right now. So
we're talking about a lot of individuals who have been killed under very rickety circumstances, let's just say. Anyone who saw the beating of Rodney King should understand that these are serious issues. I've watched that film. Cops seemed like they were having fun. They could have killed him. they weren't really concerned about that. And this has been the attitude of too often too many police officers. We want to see that change.
Well, I guess I should have been a little bit more articulate that we weren't talking about an assassination of a slain civil rights leader. So you believe what is happening in our society has created an environment that is similar to when you and Muhammad Ali and Jim Brown, Bill Russell, to name just obviously a few from the sports world, were socially active.
When we were active at that time, it was still impossible for Black Americans to vote in many districts in the South, and there were a lot of things that needed to be dealt with legally. So what we had to say was valid, and the reason that Dr. King was assassinated had to do with the fact that he was challenging those circumstances and encouraging Black Americans to resist and to overcome those circumstances. So these things are related.
Mycroft Holmes and the Apocalypse Handbook, a new comic book by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Again, that's a book that we'll be talking about again here shortly on the Rich Eisen Show. You have
It's
a copy of it.
graphic novel.
Pardon me, graphic. My bad. A graphic novel. Oh, and you just handed me when it's autographed.
Of course.
Thank you, Kareem.
You're welcome.
That is remarkable, and I want to talk about this in a moment. But obviously, the issues of the day, in a way, if you don't mind the word Trump, everything else right now.
Yeah.
What do you think of the Warriors' stance that they were appearing to make, not going to the White House to see Donald Trump? What did you think of that?
I thought that was a great way for them to use their platform to show their disapproval of Mr. Trump's activities, some of the things he said, his embrace of the Nazi Party and white supremacists. I would be very alarmed if I were going to go see someone who had those attitudes. So I don't blame the Warriors at all. And it's hard to disinvite somebody after they've already said that they're not coming.
Well, I guess they were about to do that officially, but Steph Curry had made those statements that they appeared to, so he did disinvite them. What's the way out here, Kareem? I mean, is there one? Because I mean, there's so many people who are listening to us right now, and I'll be honest, there are some listening and watching us who would love us to get off this topic, to just talk about sports. And I do want to know your thoughts on Lonzo Ball later on, to just get down to that. But all that said, this moment in time, certainly in the sports world, this agenda was set by the president on Friday night when he said what he said.
Right.
And there's so many people who do listen to this and want to hear the rest of this conversation and listen to it and watch it. They want to know, how can we get through this? How can this be a situation where everybody does get along?
I think we have to start talking to each other, and we have to start to deal with the real issues that we have. The people that went to demonstrate in Charlottesville there were real issues. Anti-Semitism, discrimination. A woman was killed, trying to demonstrate based on some real issues. And the president seemed to ignore that. Didn't even attend the woman's funeral. I think that really showed where his sentiments lie. And sometimes I wonder, how it makes any sense.
So you're saying, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar here on the Rich Eisen Show studio, you're saying that his comments on Friday with that as the backdrop is what is caused the latest thing? Or?
It's starting to appear that he doesn't get it, and that should worry a lot of people.
So where's the dialogue come from then?
Dialogue has to come between the left and the right, all the different factions in our political universe here in America. We have to talk to each other and find out who we want to be and how we want our nation to come across to the world.
Have you reached out to LeBron at all about something like this, or anybody else?
Well, I've spoken about it. I thought LeBron did a great job because he spoke about the issue. He didn't try to escape the issue. He's talking about the reality of life in this country. When I saw them on ESPN, him and Chris Paul, and Carmelo. I thought that what they had to do was it was focused, it was not hysterical, and it was to the point.
What do you think Dr. King would say if he was alive today?
Well, I think Dr. King would appreciate the fact that a lot of Black Americans have understood what nonviolent confrontation on racial issues is all about, and that's how we have to deal with this.
Let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk about your graphic novel.
Okie doke.
And why and what got you into Mycroft Holmes? And I know you have a book. This is not your first Mycroft Holmes
Right.
tome that you have put together.
Exactly.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is here, and then I do want to hit you a little bit on the upcoming Lakers season and anything else that might come to mind.
You got it.
That's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar here in the Rich Eisen Show studio. Your phone calls 844-204-RICH. We will take them. Don't you dare worry about that, along with Stephon Diggs of the Minnesota Vikings. That's all still to come. You take a look at this graphic novel, Mycroft Holmes and the Apocalypse Handbook, and you'd think the last person who would be behind this and have his name at the very top as the author would be Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and yet this is the case. Check it out right now in your local bookstore and available at the Barnes & Noble, where, again, at the Grove here in Los Angeles this Thursday, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar will be. He's here for a few more minutes on the Rich Eisen Show. How did you get into this stuff?
Read a whole lot of comic books when I was a kid.
Yeah? Like which ones?
Batman, Superman, The Flash,
Okay.
Green Hornet.
Okay, sure.
all the standard ones and a few Donald Ducks in there.
Nice. Right?
And, just as something to read, it's the thing that gets me about comics it's a different genre. You only have a limited amount of space, and you have to tell the whole story with pictures in this limited space. So it's a total different application.
Well, what about the Mycroft Holmes story that you obviously have now written about a couple
novel.
of times? Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
that was a Victorian novel. It's the tone and the speech and setting is totally Victorian, kind of like a Arthur Conan Doyle
Yeah, right.
novel.
Who wrote Sherlock, obviously. Do you watch the Sherlock series on BBC? Did you check that?
Oh
out?
yeah, the ones with Jeremy Brett.
Yeah, and Benedict Cumberbatch and those guys?
Oh, those, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
you like those?
I've watched all of them.
Do you like that? Yeah. 'Cause-
Starting with the one with Basil Rathbone.
Okay.
The
So you're
very
talking
old
about,
ones.
so you're deep into the Sherlock Holmes
From when
pop culture.
On Saturdays, used to have Sherlock Holmes Theater, and me and all my boys, we'd get together and watch it.
Right.
Yeah.
And in a TV show, in the Sherlock TV series, Mycroft is his brother, is
Right.
basically an MI6 shadowy character. It's an interesting update of the Holmes story.
Well, that's how Arthur Conan Doyle described him in the book. I think it's the Greek philosopher, the Greek professor. I'm forgetting the story, but he's someone in the government who at times is actually the British government. So that makes you wonder exactly what that's about, but it's not really clearly defined. So it was something I could use, and just let my imagination go.
The graphic novel, again, everybody can go get it online or at a bookstore near you, Mycroft Holmes and the Apocalypse Handbook. Before I let you go, Kareem, LeBron James was speaking for the first time since he put out a video and then a Twitter a tweet where he called the president a bum for disinviting the Warriors. This is what he had to say moments ago for the Cleveland Cavaliers at a podium.
I'm not going to let, while I have this platform, to let one individual, no matter the power, no matter the impact that he should have or she should have, ever use sport as a platform to divide us.
What do you think of that, Kareem?
Well, that's what you call speaking truth to power. And I'm glad that LeBron did that. It shows that he's dealing with it in a very mature and effective way. And I hope he keeps speaking up.
He's 10,000 points behind you on the all-time points list, give or take a free throw or two. Do you think he's going to catch you, Kareem?
Well, he could. I mean, I think he might get bored and, just retire and go to an island and spend some of his money. But he has a good chance at it. And if he does it, more power to him. He's been a very classy individual, and whatever he does, I'm a fan.
Have you met Lonzo Ball yet? Have you ever crossed paths with him?
I did meet Lonzo earlier this year. He seems to be a nice kid. I hope he can overcome all the hype that's been created by his dad, and have a decent season. That's going to be a hard thing to live up to.
Well, I mean, going from UCLA to Lakerdom, you know all about that. Do you think that he has what it takes in this town?
He's absolutely a talented athlete, but it takes a while to learn how to play the pro game. It doesn't just come easy, but it's great that he has the opportunity that he has, and we'll see what he can do with it.
Have you met LeVar? Have you chatted with him yet?
No, I haven't.
What would you say to him if you had a chance?
I don't know if I'd get a word in sideways.
But if you could get a word in sideways, what would you say to him?
Some of the things he does puts a lot of pressure on his kids. And in other ways, it attracts attention to them. And, if they can deliver as athletes, it's all good. So, that's for him and his family to deal with. That's all I'm going to say about it. But he can definitely fill up the air with words, that's for sure.
Okay, last minute I have here. What do you think Muhammad Ali would think of today's times if you were alive today to see it?
I think Muhammad Ali would be concerned, but I think Muhammad Ali would be happy to see all the people that have learned from his example that we got to go out here and change things if they're not going right. So I hope that's what happens.
Well, I appreciate you coming in here today. Kareem, you are welcome here anytime. I'd love to have you anytime that you are up for coming in here.
Well, I'll be back.
Terrific. I appreciate that. And Mycroft Holmes and the Apocalypse Handbook, a graphic novel.
Yes.
Okay. Is right here in my hands. And it's not the signed one here. I'll show the signed one for the television audience because that's the way he rolls. All the best, Abdul-Jabbar. Thank you so much, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Mycroft Holmes and the Apocalypse Handbook. Check it out right now online or at a local bookstore near you.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on radio stations across the country and audience.
Isn't it amazing you can download an app with your thumbprint? You should download our app with your thumbprint.